What if you're not lost? Just walking roads that slowly pulled you away from who you were. On a long, nearly straight road, a man was walking. He carried a light backpack, an old map, and a stopped watch on his wrist. He didn't look confused, just tired. His eyes were sharp but always pointed forward, like someone afraid to turn his head and remember. Time passed, but everything around him stayed the same. Trees without fruit, sky without clouds. People passed him and quickly vanished, as if the road didn't allow for company. And he kept walking. Walking because stopping hurt more than continuing. One morning, something shifted. A child sitting by the roadside called him by a name no one had used in years. He froze, confused. The girl didn't smile. She just looked at him, not at his face, but at his origin. "How do you know my name?" She didn't answer, just pointed to a broken mirror on the ground. Bending down, he saw a blurred reflection, and for a moment felt ashamed, not of how he looked, but of how far that face was from the one he remembered. Then the girl whispered, "You're not lost. You're just far from who you were. But it's not too late to return." He wanted to ask how, but she was already gone. Only the mirror remained. And his own face, for the first time in years, asked to be looked at without rushing. He stayed there in front of the broken mirror longer than he meant to, not because he wanted to, but because he no longer knew how to move forward the way he used to. The ground beneath his feet felt heavier now, as if something within him whispered, "Look before you go." He picked up the mirror gently. Small, dirty, cracked in 3 places. Still, it reflected. And what it reflected wasn't ugly nor beautiful, just too honest. The kind of truth we learn to avoid politely. He placed the mirror in his backpack. Continued walking, but something had changed. His steps were no longer as firm. His eyes, once fixed ahead, now drifted to the edges of the road. He noticed tiny flowers, the sound of distant water, leaves falling in spirals, and he realized he hadn't seen any of it in a long time. Not because it wasn't there, but because his direction had been too narrow. As the afternoon faded, he stopped near a crooked tree, sat down for the first time in days, breathed slowly, and when he removed his shoes, he felt the warmth of the earth beneath his feet, closed his eyes, and remembered. He remembered a time when dirty feet weren't a problem, when the ground was a place, not an obstacle. And in that long breath, something inside him whispered, "You're not late. You were just walking too fast to notice you'd been left behind." He cried softly, not from sadness, but reunion. And there, without a map, without a watch, he understood. Returning doesn't require direction, only presence. The next morning, he didn't rise early, didn't feel the need to move fast. His body, at last, no longer obeyed the plan. He lay still for a time he couldn't measure. The watch on his wrist, still frozen, felt less like a tool and more like a reminder. Time isn't what passes, it's what weighs. He rose slowly. His muscles ached, but not from effort. It was something else, a weight from within, as if each part of his body held a forgotten memory of who he once was. He opened his backpack, pulled out the mirror, looked again, and this time, something in the reflection seemed closer, as if the image there carried not a face, but a request. "Remember me?" So he began to write on the back of the old map. Not directions, memories. He remembered the first time he sang without knowing the words. The first tree he climbed for no reason. The last time he believed he'd be loved without having to get everything right. Each line he wrote seemed to lift some of the weight, and the map stopped being a guide and became a mirror, not showing where to go, but how far he had gone from himself. The sun was high when he reached a river. He didn't remember it, but the river remembered him. He sat by its edge, dipped his feet into the water, and in that hush of earth and water, he heard a voice that didn't come from outside. "You drifted trying to fit, but what never needed explaining still lives in you." And in that instant, he didn't want to move forward. He just wanted to be. And without realizing it, that was his first step back. In the afternoon, he wandered a path he wasn't sure was a path. Stones unlined, leaves covering the ground, yet something in him knew how to walk it, as if his body remembered what the mind had forgotten. The mirror in his backpack no longer felt heavy. It seemed now to belong not to the road, but to the landscape within. And without knowing why, he started walking with his gaze lower, not in defeat, but in listening. He found a fallen log and sat, looked at his hands, weathered, dirty, full of time, but steady. Hands that had done too much, and also hands that had forgotten how to touch. Then, without thinking, he brought them to his face, and felt it. Skin he hadn't truly touched in years, a nose that still carried childhood scents, a mouth that had silenced too many questions. And there, in the simple act of touching himself without purpose, he wept. Not from sorrow, but from overflow. The grief of everything that had never been allowed to exist. The wind rose, carried a familiar scent, damp soil, cut grass, wood smoke, memories without dates, only sensations. And with eyes closed, he knew the boy who asked too many questions still lived in him. He had only gone quiet to survive. He stood slowly, and for the first time he didn't feel the need to arrive anywhere, because he had returned to the only place that had never left, the body he was finally beginning to inhabit fully. The next morning he woke to birdsong. He wasn't sure if they had always been there or if he was only now hearing them. The sky, once dull, seemed painted with new colors, or maybe they were always there, seen now through eyes that no longer needed to defend themselves. He ate fruit picked with his hands, washed his face in the river, and for the first time in a long while, didn't hurry to dress. He stayed there, on the edge of himself, letting the wind touch parts of him he had forgotten existed. The road that once was straight now curved gently, as if it mirrored his own chest. And along that new bend, he saw someone unexpected. A woman sitting beneath a tree, writing in a notebook. She looked at him softly, asked nothing, simply moved her blanket aside slightly as if to say, "There's room." He hesitated, but his body walked, sat beside her in silence. For long minutes, no words. Only the sound of pages turning, leaves rustling, the earth breathing beneath their feet. Then she handed him something, a mirror, same size, same crack, but a different one. He looked at himself in it and saw himself whole, even with the fractures. She said, "We get lost trying to stay too continuous, but maybe what you needed was room to stop pretending you were okay." He didn't answer, but for the first time he smiled, not at her, at himself, at what still existed, at what might still return. After that meeting, he didn't rush anymore. What had once been need became presence. He walked slowly, stopped often, and with every pause, a part of him returned, something he had left behind somewhere along time's path. He realized he no longer needed the backpack, placed the mirror in the pocket of his shirt and left the rest behind, not as surrender, but as understanding. There was nothing left to carry. The woman under the tree never reappeared. But he felt her presence, or maybe it was the echo of a gesture that reached far, a gesture that said, "You don't have to keep proving you're okay." He came to a clearing. The ground was blanketed in dry leaves. In the center, a wide round stone, like an altar. He sat on it, removed his shoes, closed his eyes, breathed deeply, and then he realized he didn't miss places. He missed sensations, the lightness of laughing alone, the joy of not knowing, the courage to ask for comfort, the silence that needed no explanation. In that moment he knew he didn't have to become who he used to be, because even that version had been seeking. What mattered now was becoming someone who could hold what was left, with no judgment, no urgency, no weight. Looking up at the sky, he whispered to himself, "If I find myself again, let it not be by resemblance and but by truth." At the last bend in the road, He didn't feel like he was arriving. He felt like he already was. The ground was the same, the trees too. But something had shifted. He was now inside his own body. He sat on a log, took out the mirror, looked at himself with tenderness, and for the first time didn't search for what was missing. He simply witnessed what remained, and it was enough. He realized then that he had never been lost. He had just stayed too long away from the moment he stopped listening to himself. And there, understanding that silence wasn't absence, but a home, he returned. No words were needed, no clarity required. He just stayed, present, whole, light, like someone who no longer carries what was never theirs to hold. Beside the log, a small wooden box. Inside it, a handwritten note. If you've also wandered too far from yourself, sit with us. Sometimes all you need is to stop needing to be found. Comment below. What part of you still longs to return but doesn't know the way? If something in you felt this silent return, subscribe. Other crossings are waiting for you in stillness. You are not lost. You were just too far from your truest name.